So real quick before I do read Genesis 1, I want to start with just the emphasis on what God shows as his descriptors. You know, like what does he qualify? And you'll hear the terms, and you'll see that it's aligned with what both Brother Lauren and Brother Brett said with being good. You know, were your acts good, or were they evil of wicked men? And so it's interesting how even when God was creating everything in the heaven and earth, you'll see the terminology. And this is what I was thinking about when I was reading this earlier. So I'm going to be in the NIV, reading Genesis 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. God said that the light was good, and he separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. And God said, "Let there be a vault between the waters to separate water from water." So God made the vault and separated the water under the vault from the water above it. And it was so. God called the vault sky. And there was evening, and there was morning, the second day. God said, "Let the water under the sky be gathered to one place, and let dry ground appear." And it was so. God called it the dry ground land, and gathered waters he called seas. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, Let the land produce vegetation, seed-bearing plants, and trees on the land that bear fruit with seed in it, according to the various kinds." And it was so. The land produced vegetation, plant-bearing seeds according to their kinds, and trees bearing fruit with seeds in it according to their kinds. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning, the third day. And God said, "Let there be lights in the vault of the sky to separate the day from the night, and let them serve as signs to mark sacred times and days and years, and let them be lights in the vault of the sky to give light on earth." And it was so. God made two great lights, the greater light to govern the day, and the lesser light to govern the night. He also made the stars. God set them in the vault of the sky to give light on earth, to govern the day and the night, and to separate light from darkness. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning, the fourth day. God said that let the water teem with living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the vault of the sky. So God created the great creatures of the sea, and every living creature, and every living thing with which the water teems and moves about in it, according to their kinds, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. God blessed them and said, "Be fruitful and increase in number, and fill the water and the seas, and let the birds increase on the earth." And there was evening and there was morning, the fifth day. God said, "Let the land produce living creatures according to their kinds, the livestock, the creatures that move along the ground, and the wild animals, each according to its kind." And it was so. God made the wild animals according to their kinds, the livestock according to their kinds, and all the creatures that move along the ground according to their kinds. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea, and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground." So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God he created them. Male and female he created them. God blessed them, and he said to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it, rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, and over every living creature that moves on the ground." Then God said, "I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth, and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They will be yours for food, and to all the beasts of the earth, and all the birds in the sky, and all the creatures that move along the ground, everything that has the breath of life in it, I give every green plant for food." And it was so. God saw all that he had made, and it was very good. And there was evening and there was morning, the sixth day. And I'm just going to read the introduction to chapter 2 as well. "Thus the heavens and the earth were completed in all their vast array. By the seventh day God had finished the work he had been doing. So on the seventh day he rested from all his work. Then God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it he rested from all the work of creating that he had done." So before I started reading, I wanted to have you kind of be listening for some of the words that God used, and some of them are subtle, but some of them were kind of really impactful. So after every creation, God didn't finish that creation until he saw that it was good. So that's how he knew he was done with that creation, because he himself, God, decided that it was good, and
Right.
he wasn't going to be good with anything less than good. Verse 16, it says, God had made two great lights, the greater light to govern the day, and the lesser light to govern the night. And then it says in verse 18, to govern the day and night was the stars in the sky. The word govern, um, that was their purpose. The light was its purpose, and I think it was strong enough to be used three different times. And this is the translation I'm reading as govern. I'm sure it's different in different translations,
Right.
but I like that it shows the reason. And so then that goes back to the another purpose or reason is in verse 14, when it's why God created the lights and the vaults in the sky to separate day from night, was to serve as signs, to mark sacred times and days and years. Uh, so what I really like about this portion of the text is that we were created in His image. God had a plan. He decided that after every creation, He had to see that it was good before He was done with the creation. He had a purpose for each of the creations, and before we were placed on this earth, there was already a purpose for us. And it says later in chapter 3, when it starts to talk about how uh, so it's in chapter 2, verse 5. Now no shrub had yet appeared on the earth, and no plant had yet sprung up, for the God had not sent rain on the earth, and there was no one to work the ground, but streams came up from the earth and watered the whole surface of the ground. And so that's about to talk about the creation of Adam from dust. But before they were created, God had already had a purpose to uh, tame the animals, to govern them, to guide them, to every living thing on the earth that had breath in it was to be the responsibility or purpose or reason of Adam to govern. So God already had a purpose for Adam before He made Eve. It wasn't for man to find his purpose in his wife or to please his wife. His first duty was to govern or be responsible for his job. His first job was to take care of the plants, the animals. And so before there was even man, God had already had a job for man to do. And that job He had in it, in God's perfect design, there was a day and a night. There was lights from the sun and lights from the moon to distinguish a plan, so that when Adam was doing his job, he would know when to till the land. He would know when to grow the plants and when to, everything from his duties. He could see, which was in 14, and that's the part that shows that there was a inside his soon to be job for Adam, to govern and to basically manage, this creation God has just created. There was a way to do it, and so he'd have that guide. He would see when it's day, when it's night, from the stars. He had a direction. That's what I really. So that was cool. I like that part. That's where I kind of got a personal, takeaway from. But that God had, before every day, before He finished, He had to see that his completion was good, and then going to, before He rested on the seventh day, 31. God saw all that He had made, and it was very good. And there was evening and there was morning the sixth day. So before He could rest, before God could rest, I mean that's a big order. He is God. He could rest whenever He wants, but He has that perfect, that completeness. That's he's going to do a good job, and he won't stop until he won't rest until it is done. He said it was very good. That's what I liked out of my 2 points.
Well, the earlier translations, so the King James and the New King James said, so in the King James in 1:16, chapter 1, verse 16, it says, God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. And he made the stars also. In the New King James, it says, then God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. NIV, God made two great lights, the greater light to govern the day and the lesser light to govern the night. He also made the stars. So it's like an illumination thing, you know, like he ordered it in a specific way. And if he wanted to, and if he wanted to create it and order it differently, he would have done it that way. And that's the way we would look at it. But he did it this way. So
yeah,
I like how you said that God created Adam, with a purpose, and it wasn't to please his wife first. It was to do his duty to love the Lord. It goes back to commandment number 1, to have no other gods before him. Now, the greatest command is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And if we put anything ahead of God, even a wife, we're already missing the mark.
I went to this. It's interesting. When I went to this, I was kind of drawn to this to read the scripture tonight. But my reasoning, or not reasoning, my inspiration, I guess, to come here was I was looking at what is purpose, like what is, and I was kind of struggling with what am I supposed to be doing with my life right now, and I was like, well, let's just go back to the beginning of the Bible and see what God put us here for. And so that's when I started reading. I was kind of sinking in a little bit about what I needed to hear. And sometimes I'm reading the scripture and it's right there, and I can read it, a week later, and I read a different thing. But that's the greatness of the living word. And what I got was God telling me the instruction of your first job is to be obedient, and your job is to take care of the land, take care of the creatures I have provided, my creation. And so when God made us in his image, in his likeness, he gave us ability. I don't think that's solely to describe what we look like. I don't think that's a likeness to say, I could be put in a mirror and I would look like God. I think that's to resemble
correct
more of what God has in him, and so some of the words I was reading is like, the rule over, like that right after Ponce had read in 28, I think it was, where it says, the man and woman were to rule over the fish in the sea and the birds. And the example of God's creation was there to govern over with the light, and different words like that. So that's what I kind of liked, was all the different real subtle terminology used to describe some of our job duties. So yeah, that's kind of where I got to it.